All right, Kenneth and Julia, you were the hair and makeup department heads on the film Loving. And probably the most challenging thing you were tasked with was taking the very recognizable faces of Joel Edgerton and Ruth Negga and turning them into Richard and Mildred Loving. So how did you start with that? How did you start your jobs?
Well, you want to go? Well, I think as soon as Kenneth cut Joel's hair and dyed it, he was already Richard. So, what I did with Joel is I tried to make him look a little older, weather his skin a little bit because he was out in the sun working, and so Richard had a lot of sun damage, and I tried to do that with Joel, with makeup, still trying to keep it very natural. We lightened his eyebrows, and with Ruth, I thinned out her eyebrows a lot, and for Ruth, I mean, Mildred didn't wear makeup, so we kept her really clean and natural, and we just tried to match her skin tone, and the rest was very clean and natural for me for makeup with them.
Mm-hmm. And for me, starting with Ruth, just recreating Mildred was the joy, because there's a period in Richmond where she's a country girl and pretty much natural and living that life, being in love with Mr. Loving. And so I kept her that way until after her first child, I cut her hair. And they were living in DC by this time. And she kind of cleaned her act up a little bit. She took care of herself more. But then when we were in the country, going back and forth, we should go from long to short from any given time. You see her at the racetrack and at the juke joint, and she's very country. And then you see her in the city, and she's a little more refined. And when she's going through all the trauma and turmoil of being in jail, you see a whole other side of her. There's so many sides of Ruth in this film, and you realize that she's the strength in this film. She's that woman that speaks her mind and says what she has to say. Joel doesn't want to create waves because he wants his family, and he loves the love that they have is what is the important part of this film to me, and it speaks to itself.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Well, it's really striking. I watched the HBO documentary after having seen this film, and I mean, they really do look quite similar. So kudos to you. I wonder if you could talk a bit about using that as a guide for your work, or just using archival footage, photographs as a guide work.
Yeah, we were really lucky that we had the documentary and we had all those photographs. Okay. We kept a book in our trailer, yeah. And we matched up a lot of the pictures to them, and especially with the background actors and everything. We tried to really replicate everything that we had, and we were lucky to have access to all that.
And then you have to realize too, it's like this was an entire film. This wasn't just Ruth and Joel. Every background person, everybody in that film played an important part, and you had to stick to the period, especially the Richmond period. When you get into DC, that's a whole nother era, because they got a beauty shop you can go to every 2 or 3 weeks, and you can kind of clean your act up. And you look at Ruth and or Mildred, how she kept her children and her family up, that that she had changed a bit about, I mean, even at home in the country, she kept her family together. But to see her grow, and to see her, when her baby got hit that day in that street, and you see those bags packed, you knew there was a turning point there. And to have these attorneys come to her pro bono, that was a whole nother turning point. She was strengthened in so many ways. And to write this letter to Bobby Kennedy, to go through that, and then you see the turmoil and the hurt and the disappointment in her, and she exudes that on screen. There's times like we would do 2 or 3 different scenes in one day, so consequently I had to put a base in her hair that would last through being messed up, to try to and then to get her back to a neat and replicate what we had done yesterday without having to do a whole thing and hold up production. So it was a joy, it was fun, and Jeff was an inspiration. He knew, he had definite thoughts about how she should look. And Ruth, she had studied Mildred 2 years prior to her even doing Mildred. So we would get on that trailer and we would share, she would share her thoughts and I would share my thoughts, and we would have a collaboration. And Julia here would be right there with us. The 3 of us would work like a well-oiled machine. We had our days and things where we fought, and I would do what I had to do to her, and I always made sure that she had the final touch. Ruth, that is, Mildred. I would get it done and I'd say, okay, now this is what we're doing today. I said, now you get your fingers in there and you find the Mildred that you want to deal with today, because you're going to be this all day, or at least until we complete this scene. We might have to go back and change you into something we did yesterday, but right now this is it, so find it. And we had that kind of rapport, and it was so cool.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting, that kind of having to shoot multiple scenes in a day. I think those kinds of nuts and bolts of filmmaking, you know, it can make a job really difficult, like the job that you guys have, trying to chart a progression throughout an entire film. So what are some of the kind of practical ways that you keep the look consistent, shall we say, or to follow through with this progression that you're talking about?
It's called continuity. You take thousands of pictures, put the scene number, the day you shot it, where we were, and then when that scene comes back up, you go through your book, it's all there, and you say, this is what we did. This is how this has got to look today. We have to do this very same hairdo today. So that's what I'm saying. If you put a good base into a hairstyle and a good curl into a hairstyle, like when they woke them up and took them to jail, you saw how she came out of that house. And you see her in jail the next day, not the same day. I had to make sure that she came out of that house and in that jail cell looking like she did when they woke her up and put her in that jail. So that's where the continuity comes in. And it's nothing worse than seeing somebody's hair on this side and then on this side in that same scene. You know what I'm saying? So, so that was my biggest thing, was continuity. I mean, I swore by that. That was, if you got that right and you pay attention to the actors, especially secure actors, these 2 actors knew their characters. Then they worked with me and Julie. I would sometimes go to Ruth's house after we wrap and set her hair for the next day, because we didn't have a lot of time to be curling those little tiny curls and doing all that stuff. And she was woman enough and actor enough and free enough to allow me to do this. And she said, Ken, whatever it takes. And I loved her for that. You know, she's special.
There's also about a decade's worth of subtle aging that you have to do throughout the film. So I wonder how you conveyed that, the passage of time that way.
Well, with Joel, I gave him, I did some lines on his face. I gave him more texture to his skin. You know, I wanted him to look like he'd been out in the sun. With Ruth, I made her a little more tired. But still, we knew we were going to be really close on them. There were a lot of close-up scenes, so we really wanted to keep it subtle and natural, and we didn't want to see makeup. So that was tough to do. I hope it came across that time had passed and they were aged. But yeah, that's. And
then see the actors too. They lent a big help to us, because just their ability to go to an older place with a look, with a wrinkle, with a furrowed forehead, with anxiety, whatever it was that they did it well. I mean, they really, really did it. And it wasn't like it was required to do a whole bunch of things, because that would, the subtlety of this entire film is not in the spoken word. It's in how they portrayed each scene. And, you know, it's joy to watch an actor be able to make you cry without saying a word, or make you understand exactly or feel what they're feeling by just one look. The love that she had for him when she touched him and kissed him on his forehead, that was a moment of tear-jerking time, you know? Mm-hmm. There were a lot of crying times in this film. So the actors played a significant role in how they came across and how they aged. They knew, even in their wardrobe, Erin, she would put things on them that would make them come down a notch. So there were a lot of factors besides makeup or hair, or just it's in their looks.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a subtlety to the film that is quite powerful, and that starts with the direction. So if you could talk a bit more about what Jeff Nichols gave you that helped you with your job.
Well, right when we started in prep, we had watched the documentary before we started the film, and then we had a ton of reference pictures.
And all those tests that we did.
Yeah,
and because
we had a whole week of tests.
I mean, we had to do lighting. It was so many things you had to find to make this work, aside from what we did. And RTP was amazing. He was able to capture and light them in a certain way that would bring that aged look. Mm-hmm. And it was like, we went through a week of testing with the kids, with the family, with everyone. And when we did our first day of filming, it was madness, because I had gone to a location that was the same street, same place, but 50 miles away from where I was supposed to be. But I got there, but GPS said, "Oh, you have arrived, and it's a vacant field," you know? I drove like hell. Like, I made it back before the first shot and got her ready. But it was a day I'll never forget. And then that's when I learned that there is different parts of Richmond that have the same names, the same streets, but they're in a different part. It's north or south, I punched in and I just picked up what came up. Mm-hmm. I called them and I said, "Well, there's no signs. I can't see anything, but I'm here, you know." "No, you're not here." You remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
So it was a lot of factors going on, but we were so determined, so bound, and we so loved the project until it was not like we were going to work. That first day was like I had been to 2 jobs, which I had, 2 locations for sure. Mm-hmm. And Jeff was the martyr. He was the cement. He was the strength behind this. And he's so cool and so level-headed. He just speaks to you and, do you think we can get this? Especially with Joel when we first started, because I had to bleach and bleach and bleach. But thank God we had time to get to the right color. You know, that was a big, intricate part. And Joel was just such a dream. And I had things for he and Ruth, to condition and take care, because 3 months working on your hair every day, and they worked every day. Mm-hmm. So it was something. It was a challenge. But like I say, in working with secure people, it makes such a difference. People that you can talk to, people that can tell you, say, "I think I would like to do this," and you're not offended. You're just realizing this person is embracing this person that they're portraying. So it was easy to do. It was easy to do. But like I say, you build a base, you have something to work with. And so I made sure that every day that she worked, not knowing if we finished the scene and I knew we were going to go into a scene we did another day, I was prepared for that already. I didn't have to hold up production waiting on me, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm certainly glad you made it to the set.
I know, it was the talk of the set. I mean, it was the talk of 50 miles away.
Well, thank you both so much, and congratulations on the film. It's wonderful, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and so glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You as
you.
well.
Thank you. Bye.